Well, hello there. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon to you, wherever you are in the world. Welcome to Lorena's Labyrinth, or welcome back. Thank you for joining me. Just a reminder that I do tend to go off on a tangent, so just be aware of that. I do put timing stamps in the description of the video so you can jump to whatever area or the topic that you're particularly interested in. And my aim is I hope that these will become video reference tools for you that you can come back to when you want to get a little bit more information or whatever. Today, of course, we're going to be talking about amethyst, which is basically on the radar, I think, for anybody that's involved in crystals, because it's actually just such a beautiful crystal in itself. And whether you're into metaphysical properties or not, most people will appreciate the beauty of amethyst. Before I get into it, though, I would like to thank you for being part of my journey. And let's kick on with it. So bearing in mind that all the videos that I create on this playlist on the channel about crystals, I've called them Crystal Magicke. Whenever we think of crystal magic, of course, I think those people that are into the metaphysical properties and attributes of crystals are going to immediately think of amethyst. And I think potentially this is not only because it's got some wonderful healing attributes, but it must have had some very good marketers back in the day doing the selling and the retailing of it, because quite often I will hear people make fairly generic comments about amethyst as far as, oh, it's the best and all the rest of it. Well, it's pretty darn good. I won't dispute that. But there are other amazing crystals as well. Amethyst is just one of them. Of course, it's part of all of our collections as well. In fact, when I picked my engagement ring long before I was into metaphysical properties of crystals, I actually picked a beautiful, deep purple amethyst as my ring. Now, just a little background for you. The word amethyst is a name basically that was derived from the ancient Greeks. Back in ancient times, it was believed that if you drank from an amethyst cup, that you would be able to stay sober, basically. You wouldn't get intoxicated by drinking from it. Did I say intoxicated? I meant intoxicated. So I guess the point I'm making, it's got a very long history of where people have believed that it's magical and that it's got protective qualities to it as well. So as far as the Zodiac and the Astro goes, it is actually the birth sign for Aquarius, or the birth sign. What do they call them? Birth crystal, birth stones. For Aquarius, but it's also recommended for those people that are born under the sun sign of Pisces as well. I'm not quite sure why, but the bottom line is it really doesn't matter what your star sign is. Anybody can actually work with the attributes of amethyst and expect or feel comfortable that there's going to be some form of positive result. Of course, that's my particular bias, I suppose, to say that confidently, that yes, you will receive benefit from it. Look, it's very calming and soothing. We will do an overview of it shortly, but at the end of the day, amethyst, in all its forms, brings comfort with it. And I guess this is no doubt part of the reason why it's referred to as a master healer and a stone of spirituality. It really actually is impossible to do the justice to the attributes of amethyst here, even in this video, because there's not just the straightforward attributes that I'm going to be giving to you today, but there's so many little tips and tricks that you can use it with to maximize, utilizing the energy the best. So either way, it does have many healing qualities attributed to it across the whole of the mind, body, spirit, energies, shall you say, but not just about how we live our life currently. When we talk about mind, body and spirit in the physical form, we tend to be focusing on, how do I feel? What are my thoughts? What am I thinking? What am I doing? from a physical perspective, that's mind, body, and spirit. But it goes beyond that. It goes into your astral bodies, shall we say. So we've got a mental body, and we've got an emotional body, we've got a physical body. So it offers healing and energy rebalance across all of those. So this is why I guess we refer to it or say that its attributes include the expansion of the soul. There is a level of protection involved with it. If you were attempting to manifest, you would certainly be using amethyst if you had it available. A lot of the transformational attributes will be because it is associated also with the violet ray. I'm not going to spend this video talking about the violet ray. I'm pretty sure I've done it somewhere else. But at the end of the day, the violet ray is about transmutation of negative energy to positive. And this is probably why we see with amethyst that it is, I say attributed because that's what we believe, that's what we think, that it's going to help to transform the energy within and around you and to purify the energy fields. Oh, with some humour, I just realised I should backtrack a bit to the story about my engagement ring when I say that I picked it out. The bottom line is my fiance at the time, then to be my husband, later to be my husband, he took me down to the jewellers, and it was a case of, pick the ring that you want. And it turned out, funnily enough, I was able to pick without looking at price tags. And I picked the one that, of course, was the most expensive out the whole pack. But, that's what you do. We can't help it. We women, our eyes are attuned for that. So anyway, getting back to the mineral information about amethyst, well, it is a quartz. It's a member of the quartz family, and it does have a relative hardness to it. But when we talk about mineral hardness, 7 is not bad, but it still can be damaged. That's the point to be made. It's not considered to be a soft crystal, but it's not a super hard one either. Sorry, I just needed to have a cough. So what that means is that you can wear it comfortably if you're going to have it as a jewellery item without worrying too much about damaging it. But if you're going to have it as a ring, you'll need to be careful. You would want to take it off when you actually wash your dishes or put your hands into chemical and things like that. And you don't want to be bumping your rings against things because it can actually fracture, it can become damaged. But we will be talking about how to care for your crystal later on in the video, so I'll leave that for now. Now, as far as the colours go, I think this is why everybody sort of says, oh, Brazil's got the best, Brazil's got the best. Well, I think they do, certainly. I'm not going to say they don't. Everybody would think I was insane anyway if they knew anything about amethyst. They really do have some brilliant amethyst that comes out of Brazil. That seems to be the most popular, the South American stuff. And it's not just Brazil, it's Uruguay as well. It has some wonderful, really deep violet amethyst. And those are the ones that tend to become the gem quality. But there is also amethyst that is a pale lavender. It can be a pale lavender type colour and go all the way through to violet. Now, it's not an uncommon crystal. It's, we would not call it rare by any stretch of the imagination. And as far as where you can get it from, look, the list would be too long, but here in Australia, we also have purple amethyst. Oh, I actually just need to clarify something here. If you see something marked green amethyst or any other colour beyond purple amethyst, so there is the range of colours, pale lavender to deep violet, then it's not amethyst, but we will have that conversation in a little while. My amethyst, I've got the bottom of a geode, and it's actually not the deep violet, because it's Australian to start with. It was found by an Australian prospector and I bought it off them. But it's a very unique and original type geode. I consider to be stunning, actually. And it's got a growth inside of it. And to be honest, I don't know what that growth is. I think it might be calcite. But either way, it's very unusual and particularly stunning, I think. So when it comes to tips around buying amethyst, okay, as I mentioned, you've got the whole range of colours. So I guess when we're talking about the vibrancy of a crystal of any type, actually the vibrant colours, but particularly with amethyst, the nature of that colour kind of determines whether or not it's A grade, I guess, your best quality. And the more white and the paler it becomes, can often be a case of it's not considered to be such high quality. Having said that, as I said, my geode is more of the pale lavender type. I might take a photo of it and put it up at some point in time. And it's got lots of natural little, they call them occlusions, little flaws, I guess, in them. But I like it because to me, it is indicative that not everything is perfect, okay? Or what we believe to be perfect. There's a certain amount of beauty in seeing some natural flaws. But at the same time, it's important to be able to establish the price, I guess. Like, obviously, these in these images here, what you're seeing is small points. Each one of these little amethysts, because you've got your big family group of points, you might as well say, and then you've got your little individual points. Now, they can actually break away naturally or with help from the rest of that big group that you've got there and just be a point, you know what I mean, unpolished or anything like that. The little image on the right-hand side, I've included that there because they are polished points. But what I'm trying to allude to here is that when it comes to the points in the clusters, the big rocky bit there, they are the part that can be damaged. So if you've got a beautiful cluster, you would want to be taking care of those points so they don't break. And I'll discuss that a little bit further in a moment. What else can I say about this? Of course, the other attractive thing with Brazilian amethyst is because the points in most of the clusters they have are actually really large. I think the Uruguayan, in hindsight, if I was to take or hazard a guess, I would be guessing that this image that we've got in front of us here is from Uruguay because it's got a more tightly condensed, smaller range of points, whereas I think the ones from Brazil, if memory serves me well, and of course I welcome your feedback and your thoughts, the ones from Brazil seem to be much bigger points within the clusters. And of course, this is not doing it justice, actually. I just realised most people have seen a geode or an amethyst cave, right? The caves from Brazil, they're the ones that I would say would usually have the bigger points. But I need to be careful here because at the end of the day, you can get geodes from anywhere. As I said, amethyst is not rare, and so you can get it from all over the place. So if I was to turn around and say to you right now that you only get the big geodes with the big points from Brazil, that would actually be misleading and false information, actually, because I know in Queensland here in Australia, they've got some enormous geodes that are full of beautiful and enormous deep purple points as well. In fact, I think you can find one on the internet. So what I want to do here is actually draw to your attention that amethyst is more than just a geode or a cluster or points, okay? So what we're looking at here is different forms of amethyst. You've got the chevrons that are at the top left hand side, and they've got that interesting white stripe in them. Now they are actually considered to be quite, I suppose, sought after when it comes to making jewellery items. With meditation as well, people like to have the chevrons. A chevron like that is the sort of chevron that you would actually meditate with. And if it were me, I'd have one in the left hand and one in the right. And I would probably, your non-writing hand, I would be holding the chevron on the right-hand side with those very distinctive white triangulated points, if you like, or arrowhead type points. I would be holding that in my left hand because that's my non-writing hand, with the white pointing towards my body. And then the other chevron, the smaller one, I would hold in my right hand because that's my writing hand. And I would hold that one by the small tip. So there's a rationale that applies to that, and that is energy in and energy out. And so with those white points of the right hand chevron, I would want the energy coming into my body from the universe, if that makes sense. Now, I'm just going to pause this for a moment because I want to just look at something before I talk to you about it. I can't see it. Never mind. Okay, so what I'm going to talk about now is this other beautiful, beautiful amethyst flower. Now, I'm not quite sure where to begin with this. I have done notes about this, but at the same time, I don't think I can convey in words just how beautiful and how much I love the amethyst flower. I actually have one myself. Now, as people are aware, I used to go and spend a lot of time with crystal lovers, shall we say, metaphysical practitioners who used crystals in the course of their work. And we would share strategy with each other. And of course, where we used to go was to a friend, became my friend, an importer of crystals. And in fact, he had basically a museum-sized piece of amethyst flower. So for your information, these beautiful amethyst flowers, I'm talking about the one in the center, they grow on a host rock. And the one that he had, the piece that he had, probably had about 30 of these amethyst flowers growing all over it. That's why I say it was a museum piece. And very, very similar to these flowers that we've got here. They are an absolute cluster. And they have the palest pale, it's easy to look at this photograph here and think that all those little points on the outside are white or clear quartz, but they're actually not. They're a very pale lilac. And then as you go towards the center of the flower, you've got a greater depth of the color. So bearing that in mind, if you look at the photo on the right hand side up the top, you can see that it's got the shades of purple in there. That would be a amethyst flower that's broken apart, either helped to break apart or just broken apart on its own. Sorry, I needed to clear my throat again. Okay, so where I'm going with this is that was my experience of seeing amethyst flowers and being around them, that they were this color. But as I was doing the research for this video, I saw that actually you have the deep purple ones as well. If you look at the image of the circles, I'm going to go into that in a moment because that actually, as a crystal lover, really gets up my nose that people are treating amethyst flowers in this way. But you can see anyway that with those slices, because that's a slice of an amethyst flower, you can see that they have some that are more white on the outside or very, very pale. And then there is a range of depth. So you've got some amethyst flowers that have got quite deep purple petals, shall we say, on the bottom. Now, where I'm going with this is the reason why this is going to be a long slide, sorry. This is a problem for me, and I would imagine any crystal lover, that people are doing this, because you can see how precious and perfectly formed these amethyst flowers are. I didn't understand why people would be slicing them, but I know now. Okay, I've worked it out. It's because amethyst flowers are quite rare. Very rare, actually, and so they can be quite expensive. So if somebody gets one and they slice the base of it, like you see in these circles, that means that they are left with a whole heap of singular petals. Sounds like nothing. Doesn't sound like a big deal, does it, really? It is a big deal from where I sit. What I observed is that they will then sell off all these petals individually. These are the little crystals that you see on the right-hand side. And some people are paying like $6 or $7 or even more dollars for these tiny, and they will be tiny, tiny little points. So if you think about that, let's say, and it would be a very, very small piece of amethyst flower that you would get 20 points off. Right, so you're looking at a lot of money that is being made by breaking these points off or slicing them off. Now, when I was writing the transcript for this video, I actually went and found my little cluster. I thought I'm going to have a look at this to try and get a bit of an idea of just how much money these people are making from absolutely destroying an amethyst flower. and I worked out that I could see about 20 points within a space of about 1 centimetre square. Actually, I stand corrected. Just went back to my notes. Okay, so the tiny little piece of amethyst flower that I've got is about 5 centimetres by 6 metres, say, on the square. Okay, it's a little bit more like a rectangle than a fan. It's just the way it's broken from the actual amethyst flower. So immediately my eye can see, without slicing into the flower, that I've got about 20 points on my tiny little cluster. And there is, not all of them are going to be really perfectly good quality for selling. I'm pretty sure that if I was some of these unethical people, I'd just sell it anyway. I shouldn't say that. That was a bit meowish, whatever. But yes, anyway, so you can see there is a lot of money to be made by destroying these. Look, I've got a couple of issues with doing it. Like in the first instance, I actually believe that they, by cutting it off, obviously it's exploitation of you, me, and the crystal. But the other thing is too, because I've actually used them within a healing context, I had a tooth abscess. And this is how I learned about how you can use the amethyst flower. And what it is you place the amethyst flower over your heart chakra. And then in this particular instance, I had a selenite wand. And I can honestly say that it's kind of like you're turning this little flower and you're actually trying, it's like turning on a radio or whatever over your heart chakra, left breast, whatever, because I'm a woman, I've got boobs, they get in the way. But anyway, it was kind of like maneuvering this little flower around until the lock happened. And believe you me, it became an energetic lock. And once it was happening, I could feel the energy radiating all the way up my jaw. Now, this is my experience, so I've got to be careful when we make claims about physical health treatments. But what ended up happening, the reason it was a matter of I couldn't get into the dentist. So another crystal healer said to me, look, do this with the amethyst flower, which I did. And all the pain went away. And when I went to the dentist, it took me about another week to be able to get in. All of the infection had gone. And when it got treated, there was indications of the abscess, but the abscess was gone. So where I'm going with this is I actually have concerns about how effective the amethyst flower point is when it's broken away from the group. I kind of think that having it in this group thing is what gives it its power. So when they smash it up for the sake of money, to me, it's like you've just ripped the heart out of the amethyst flower. How well is it going to function from here on in? Please, if you've had experience of working with the amethyst flower points, let me know. But you can see on the slices, go and do a Google and look for yourself. It's a real issue. Anyway, I'll stop waffling about this because that is probably my beef. It's probably why I like crystals that haven't been handled too much where possible. At some point in time, I will do a video on Praisolite, but the reason I'm including it here is because a lot of people think, oh, I've got some green amethyst earrings. No, you haven't, love. Okay, you don't have green amethyst because there is no such thing as green amethyst. It doesn't exist. Amethyst is purple. What happens is that amethyst, when it is heat treated, will turn green. Okay, and also amethyst can be faked. So we would say that heat-treated amethyst is cultured amethyst, and the other type of amethyst, green, is basically synthetic. It's just not the real deal. You will sometimes see people saying, green amethyst, also known as Praisolite. No, not Praisolite, okay? This is why I've got the photographs here of naturally forming Praisolite. And the one on the left is amethyst that's been heat treated. Now, I want to put to you, because people do this stuff because they know that people are going to buy it. They do things like destroy amethyst flowers and they heat treat a perfectly good purple amethyst to make it green because they know somebody is out there and they're going to buy it. I would love to encourage people to stop buying it. If you stop buying this stuff, they will stop mistreating it. Now, I also question too, that from an energetic perspective, I think once the amethyst has been cooked, it actually no longer has any of those metaphysical healing properties. Amethyst, well, obviously, it changes when it's exposed to heat, so it affects the entire makeup of the actual crystal. However, I am open to hearing your thoughts, okay? And, my logic runs to you. If you've got a master healer like you've got with amethyst, purple amethyst, why on earth would you try and tamper with it? But anyway, here is some of the spiritual metaphysical benefits. I'm going to not speak to all of them because I think they pretty well speak for themselves. You can look at them, have a read of them, divine protection, that makes sense. Animals, people might not be aware of that. If your animal has been sick, or if it barks excessively, or there's some issues with socialization for the animal as well, you can actually just put a piece of amethyst into their drinking water and that will assist them. When it comes to things such as cleansing other crystals, if you have got a cluster like the ones that I showed you before, and I was talking about the points, and you've got to treat them with a bit of care, you can pop your other crystals on top of the amethyst and clear them that way. But there is a big but. You might actually break the amethyst geode. Now, the other thing is too, I've got a cluster that I'm cleansing at the moment using amethyst. So sometimes it's using amethyst with another crystal or a couple of crystals to complete that cleansing process. So I'll let you do a Google on it. I'll just explain. I've got some tourmaline in schist with a S, schist. Right, I've got some of that, and to cleanse that, you actually cleanse it with a little piece of amethyst and a little piece of carnelian and a little piece of selenite, and that's how we cleanse it. So, it's not always that amethyst is a standalone cleanser of other crystals. Sometimes you've got to bring other crystals into the equation for whatever reasons, not sure. But other attributes of a metaphysical nature to support spiritual growth and spiritual expansion is actually being able to remember our dreams, to be able to interpret them and understand them. And amethyst is going to help with that. It's going to cut through any illusions and delusions, that delusional self-talk that we give each other or give ourselves at different times. The universe can be screaming at us as best they can. Unwise decision, rethink. But we go, no, it's just my imagination. It's just my negative mind chatter that's telling me I need to do something else. And then we go the hard way into doing things. Okay, moving on. It's recommended if you're starting up a new business. What else? You could put it in your house for protection. Many healers will actually have amethyst and geodes in their healing or treatment rooms, or if they're psychic mediums, they will keep it in their rooms because it's supposed to offer protection from things like psychic attack and negative energies. What else have we got here? Obviously, you can meditate with it to expand your mind. And if you've become stagnant in your life, it's believed to raise your personal vibration, help to move some of those barriers. And as we talk about all of this, it takes you through to this space of universal love and attracting the energy of the violet flame, the violet ray. And so therefore, it's also credited to open up your crown chakra, to stimulate it, to open your mind, and to have you explore new ways of being as well, and new ways of thinking. It's also a magnet for wealth, abundance, and prosperity. So for the purposes of keeping the video shorter rather than longer, I'm not going to talk to all of these either, but you can see that there's a number of physical attributes that people believe amethyst can benefit a person with. I would say some people might dispute the fact that addictions are physical. However, I believe that they are, in as far as, yes, it's more than just a problem with the way a person thinks, because the body creates neural pathways. There becomes patterns of thinking, and that's evidence-based. So for me, I actually think that the fact that it supports overcoming addiction, especially food and alcoholism, is part of a neural pathway type thing. So it's going to theoretically help to restructure thinking patterns to be able to overcome addiction. The other business too, I just want to put here, I've included this business of treating children's nightmares and night terrors. However, that has not been my experience, I've got to say. When one of my children was young, they were actually astraling, and it turned out it was, I will give you the out there stuff if you want to know out there. My understanding and belief is that during the sleep state, he was waking up, he was having night terrors because he was actually astraling and he was seeing things that frightened him. Bit of a long story. So we took the amethyst away, okay? A guy, cutting a long story short, a guide came through and said, get rid of the amethyst. It's what's promoting and prompting him to be astraling. And, I don't think it does any harm to turn around and say, look, he had an animal spirit guide, which is a wolf, and he was seeing his wolf. And so basically they were saying, they gave us some advice to be able to help him to feel comfortable with seeing the wolf and no longer frightened. But they also said, because he was only young at the time, that I needed to actually take the amethyst away, so that, and in fact, it wasn't just take it away, it was actually replace it with some hematite that I needed to get him to ground. So that's what I ended up doing, and that kind of resolved all of his night terrors. I'm always, as I've said before, very dubious about saying that people should use these crystals for treating physical health conditions. And there's a number of reasons why. One of them is that I have known success stories, especially when it comes to cancer. But I've also known of people to die from cancer, even though they might be doing all the metaphysical and energetic work. I do not even try to pretend to understand why it works for some people or why energy works for some and not for others. That's not my beeswax. That's their life journey. My responsibility is to say to you, do not replace your current medical treatment or the evidence-based treatment plans with metaphysical healing energy. You can use the metaphysical in conjunction with your treatment plans. It's not going to do any harm to carry a piece of amethyst, for example, if you're attempting to overcome some of the physical diseases and even malignancies. It won't do you any harm to use it with your medical regime. And it's not like you've got to go down and say to the doctor, look, I'm treating myself with amethyst as well as taking my prescriptions or whatever it is that you do. So when it comes to the benefit, I'm far more comfortable talking about the mental health benefits and emotional benefits of using any of the crystals because, whatever, we'll just leave it at that. I've already discussed the fact that when it comes to things like addiction, there's neural pathways, and as we rebuild those neural pathways, of course, we start to have thought and behaviour repatterning and change, and that leads us to more positive outcomes. So ideally, when we're talking about amethyst and the benefits, it certainly does help a person to feel more peaceful, to feel safe, to develop a sense of inner awareness, to know their limitations, to know where they want to grow. As I said, it cuts through illusions and delusions. So we're no longer talking ourselves into believing stuff that is not true, right? That is not grounded in reality. It's believed to build patience for people and to lift the mental burdens, and certainly to support having to creating the space to be able to express in healthy ways, certainly with our feelings. And it helps to feel secure within the divine love, I guess, knowing that we're loved, lovable, and loving. What else have I got here? The amethyst will support having quality of sleep. That would probably be for an adult. As I say, my jury's out with children. Just depends on the children. Mine were all psychically gifted, so that might be part of it. What I do find interesting is that it's a crystal that's recommended for you to hold or to wear if you're actively debating with people. So if you're a public speaker, you might want to invest in a piece of amethyst. So, from a chakra perspective, amethyst is associated with the brow and the crown. For some people, I think we see differences of how people interpret it because of the colors, okay? Because a lot of the time we associate colors with the chakras, the color of a crystal. And so when we talk about amethyst, we're talking about some people might associate it with this really deep violet color. And that is probably closest to the brow chakra. But when you're talking about the paler type amethyst that I have, that is more associated from a color, matches the crown chakra. So maybe this is why we see the business of amethyst is it resonates with both the crown and the brow chakra. But I should have mentioned too, or put more emphasis on the fact that when we talk about amethyst as being a master healer as well, it's also about the fact that it allows or kind of safely opens up the psychic gifts, which is your clairs, your clairvoyance, your clairaudio, all of that is associated with the brow chakra. But I'm also a big one to turn around and say we don't force that development, okay? Because the problem with opening up your brow chakra without having done the work on your crown chakra is that it can be very confusing to discern what is true and what isn't, and actually to string it together. Because I would explain clairvoyance as being a series of images, like watching the shorts of a video or a movie, or the trailers. I say shorts, nowadays they're called trailers. Yeah, to watch a trailer of a video and it doesn't give you the full picture. You don't know exactly where that's going to go, and you don't even know if that's going to be a movie that you're going to enjoy just because you've watched the trailer. So the psychic gifts, as standalone, they're not 100% reliable for the connection to the divine, shall we say, and feeling this inner harmony and peace. They certainly do help, I wouldn't deny that. But anyway, I hope I've explained that. Yeah, it's linked to the brow and to the crown chakra. So, as said before and throughout this video, amethyst not only is a master healer, but it's a very, very versatile crystal. You can wear it as jewelry. You can wear those chevrons as rings and pendants. You can use it as a treating tool if you're a crystal healer, or you could even do crystal healing on yourself. You can keep it in the environment to keep the energy high. You can meditate with it. You can cleanse other crystals with it. When I gave the explanation of what I'm doing with the crystal in my other room at the moment, where I'm using amethyst to cleanse, that's called being a companion crystal. So amethyst is quite often a companion crystal to other crystals for different purposes. And in fact, so is amethyst flower. Okay, so when I used the amethyst flower to treat my tooth abscess, I used it with selenite. So the two work together. Whatever. Okay. A lot of amethyst is carved into items for metaphysical use. You might find them as runes or healing talismans and things like that. There is a multitude of uses for amethyst. And it's just, I guess, making sure that whatever you're using is that you use it fit for purpose, that you take care with it. So on that note, let's move on to the next slide. So, in regard to caring for amethyst, as I've said before, if you're going to wear it as a jewelry item, you do need to be careful that you don't bang it against things, because it's going to fracture. It can actually crack and get destroyed. And also, it's very sensitive to chemicals as well. So, you want to be careful with that. What else was I going to say? So, clearly, if it's exposed to heat, it's going to change colour, which you don't want that. Now, the other thing too that many people probably won't be aware of if they're not in Australia because of our harsh sunlight is that exposure to the sun and sunlight will actually fade it. It will take all of that vibrancy out. You can have a crystal that is almost black because it's so violet. In fact, actually, I'd forgotten about that. I had a crystal point that was given to me that was almost black. It was so purple, it was black. But anyway, they can lose their colour when they are exposed to the sunlight. So you would be very careful about that. Now, realistically, when it comes to amethyst, sunlight is not the best method for clearing and cleansing anyway, because some of those geodes are pretty large, and lugging them outside to the sunlight is going to be problematic. It's unnecessary. You can do cleansing in other means, which is actually saging the room. You could put another cleansing type crystal perhaps onto the amethyst cluster, and that could be a little piece of selenite, it could be a piece of kyanite, just something that actually clears and cleanses. If it needs, okay, so the thing with a cluster point is that they can collect dust. And most of us, when we have the big geodes, they will be exposed to the dust. And there is a bit of a problem there with, actually, I've found this out the hard way, that if you tend to wash it off, the water goes into the cluster. And so you've got to make sure that you don't leave it to soak, because it will actually fall apart. So you've got to be careful with that. It's been said to me that you can get these blower things like you use for your keyboards. That's probably the best way to blow the dust off your points, and if necessarily wipe over with a damp cloth to get rid of any extra if you really needed to. But you would be doing it, I would advise, do it with very cautiously. Look, some people will say that amethyst can be safely cleaned with warm soapy water. I would say if you're talking about a point, yes. If you're talking about a cluster, perhaps not, okay, especially a big one. Ultrasonic cleaners are supposed to be, so if we're talking about jewelry care, reasonably safe, unless, there's a big unless you've got one of the synthetic ones and didn't know, right? So if it's the real McCoy and you put it in the cleaner, it should be okay. But if you've got one of the synthetic ones, probably not, okay? Steam cleaning is definitely not recommended. I don't think, once again, that I would use salt to cleanse and recharge. I would be potentially putting a cluster, if it was a small one, or a point, into a pot of earth or in the garden bed, perhaps under the shade of a tree. It will certainly cope with moonlight. There's not an issue with moonlight. After my experiences with water, I would say probably not out in the rain, unless it's a pendant. Okay, so I have in the past actually had pendants which I've hung on the tree branches. I don't recommend it here in Australia because, of course, we've got birds that will see them as sparkly things when, the dawn chorus happens. So they may not be there in the morning. So I wouldn't really recommend that now. I'm just one of those people. I've tried a lot of things over the years, tried and tested and learned from my mistakes. If you've got any suggestions, though, feel free to add them. Just a couple of affirmations here for you if you decided to meditate or start working personally with the amethyst, just to help you out. Obviously you're going to adapt these to suit your own circumstances, but it's very important, as always, to make your affirmations in the positive, in a statement form. You would never turn around and say something like, I'm grateful for all the abundance because I'm sick to death of being poor. Okay, because the universe is going to hear, I'm grateful for, and the last part of the sentence being poor, and they will give it to you exactly the way you've asked for it. So you watch the phrase of your affirmation, which is, what have I got here? I am grateful for the universal healing light that raises my personal vibration to the maximum I can carry. I am. I mean, that's a big statement. You actually want them to be about half that size. But these are just suggestions for you to have a bit of an idea, a bit of a play around and come up with your own ones. So when it comes to a messenger, if somebody was to pick amethyst out of my crystal lucky dip bowl, I would be saying, hey, the indications here are that it's time for you to let go of this self-judgment. Okay, let go of judgment of whether or not you're a good person or a bad person. You may have done things that were unwise. You may have done things that are regrettable. But the bottom line is we all have good and bad within the yin-yang symbol, okay? We've all got a bit of white. We've all got a bit of black. And it's how we live our life, the choices that we make today as to what the path ahead is going to look like. So instead of focusing on all the negative aspects, embrace them as part of being who and what you are that have brought you to where you are today. So going forward today, it's accepting that and sending the light into the darker shadow aspects of self, because this is the shadow aspect, the parts of ourselves that we would deny and don't like. That's our shadow, because we're never going to, we can't leave that behind. It's part of who we are. It's part of us growing. I guess in some ways it's our inner child and all the rest of it. So the best way to help the inner child is love it, and that is the same with our shadow. To love it, to be compassionate, to be kind to ourselves. Okay, so that would be, I guess, what I would be saying to somebody is to be aware that it exists, and that to be able to tap into this really spiritual aspect of life, to raise that personal vibration, to turn everything around, transform it, and all the rest of it, involves forgiveness and love of self. Actually is probably right up there at the top, more so than forgiving other people for what they might have done to you or me or whatever. There is this business of forgiving ourselves for not being who we wanted to be, and then in the process forgiving others. It's much more easier to forgive others once we've learned how to be kind to ourselves. I think that's where that saying comes from, that before you can love somebody else, you've got to be able to love yourself, and that means being kind to yourself. And oh dear, and my apologies, this has been a really long video again. So I'm going to wind it up here. So thank you for being part of my journey once again. I'm going to love yous, leave yous. I'm going to dash off because actually I'm starving and I need to go down the shops. It happens. In the meantime, I'm going to say have a wonderful day, wonderful week, blessings to you, and Happy New Year. Thanks for being part of my journey. Bye-bye for now.